Out this morning, from the continued increased federal presence in the nation's capital to the top issues once Congress gets back from recess. For more insight on all of those topics, we are joined by News Nation contributors Lauren Wright and Chris Cillizza. Thank you both for being here this morning. We're going to start with the crime crackdown. Lauren, I'll start with you. I want to ask you about some of the polling that we've seen. We got a new Reuters Ipsos poll nationally showing that the president has support for cracking down on D.C. crime with federal law enforcement. But last week we had polling from locals saying that they did not like what the president was doing. So when we talk about where we go from here, how do you think the White House looks at those numbers? Nationally, the president's being lauded for what he's doing. Locally, not so much.
Well, of course, they're going to look at whatever numbers are best for them and cite those. But what I thought was really interesting about the reporting you just had was Mayor Bowser's really about face on this. I think she has a very finely tuned political weather vane. And the fact that she's saying crime has come down means she's sort of meeting where the rubber hits the road on the reality of the stats, and she doesn't want to be on the wrong side of public opinion. And so I do think this is a very similar situation, perhaps, to Mayor Giuliani's tenure in New York. A lot of New Yorkers will tell you, even though crime was slipping, was really coming down across the nation in all major cities, a lot of people cited anecdotal evidence about feeling safer walking on the streets. And so even if a third of locals agree with this, even if a fourth of locals agree with this, you have to consider the larger political context, which is Trump is disliked very severely in DC. And so even a sliver of Democrats that are admitting this might be working is positive news for the White House. I still think they're on the right side of this thing.
And the president is still tightening his grip, if you will, on the district. He's talked about possibly, trying to get Congress to overturn home rule. He's talked about bringing the death penalty back to the district. He's talked about all sorts of things. We have more than 2,000 National Guard troops here in the city. Chris, it seems as if, even though some Washingtonians may very well agree with this, it seems like there is a rebellion, an emotional rebellion brewing among people who really want us to fight back. Not us, but them to fight back. And that is also illustrated by these indictments that can't happen, these grand jury indictments.
Yeah, Hillary, look, legally speaking, Donald Trump can take over the city for 30 days. We're about 2.5 weeks into it, right? He has already said, the police force, I shouldn't say the city more broadly, he's already said he would like to see that extended. If past his prologue, he will probably push to do that, and it will be Congress, controlled by Republicans, that will okay it. Will that make everyone in D.C. happy? No, I don't think that it will. At the same time, I guess I've been a little bit surprised that you haven't seen more protests. You haven't seen, there's been some, but you haven't seen wide scale protesting of this federal involvement in D.C. And I do think, to Lauren's point, I do think the mayor's reaction there is sort of a realpolitik moment. I think she knows Donald Trump has considerable power still over Washington, and she does not want to, candidly, piss him off. So I think, and she looks at these numbers, and it's hard not to say, look, it's a good thing that there is less crime, less carjacking, less violent crime, less burglaries. It's a good thing broadly for DC or any city for that to be the case. So I thought that her tone yesterday was really important as sort of a sign of how can you manage Donald Trump, given the fact that D.C. is unique, that there is this sort of built-in federal oversight that is not the case in other cities.
So to that point, we know the president has sort of escalated this takeover of law enforcement. He's beefed up federal presence. He's deployed guards. He's allowed them to carry weapons. Now he's got Jeanine Pirro talking about the death penalty. We spoke to an attorney yesterday about the legality of bringing the death penalty back to the district. Let's listen.
In terms of directly going and imposing it on D.C. crimes under the D.C. Code, really, he'd have to kind of violate the Home Rule Act of 1973. And I think that would take an act of Congress to allow him to do that.
So, Lauren, we know, look, capital punishment is a whole different debate, but in terms of the context of,
Right.
of where we're living now, do you think this is maybe a bridge too far for the president, or do you think Congress may say, okay, let's try and figure this out and make it work and bring the death penalty back to D.C.?
Perhaps, but again, he's signaling, which every president does. They sort of float an idea, and so they can say to their base, look, I tried. I'm being as harsh as possible on crime. And if it's something they sort of know in the back of their head can't happen, then at least they tried. And that's a strong political message. But the death penalty is a different issue than crime entirely. I mean, this is something where public opinion is very split. About 5 years ago, it used to be 60% of the population that supported it. Now it's about 53%. It's a very divisive issue. And as someone who teaches the presidency at Princeton, and my poor students who have to read the Federalist Papers over and over again know that it's just sort of ingrained in our system, the way our Constitution is set up, that there's a leniency on crime. That's why we have presidential pardons, for instance, because you don't want to end up in the worst case scenario where someone who did not commit a crime is wrongly accused and receives the death penalty for something they didn't do. It's just such a disastrous scenario that the leniency is built in. And that's just one of the reasons the public is very mixed on this issue and has been for the last 10 years.
All right, guys, Congress is going to be back real soon. We're kind of out of time, but if you can each take like 20 seconds and say what you're looking for most when Congress returns. Lauren, we could start with you.
Okay, and I'll be very fast because I want to hear what Chris thinks, but I know there's this issue with individual stock trading. It seems like something everyone should agree on. Congress has been very slow on that. And then, of course, we're all watching for the Jeffrey Epstein issue where a lot of Trump's party has bucked him on the issue.
I will echo Lauren on Epstein. We think there will be a discharge petition, which basically means there will be a forced vote on the House about the releasing of the Epstein files. It is not binding. The Department of Justice will not have to release them, but I do think if that vote happens, it will almost certainly succeed. And it is sort of one of the first times we've seen a rebellion among Republican ranks against Donald Trump and what Donald Trump wants.
All right. Lauren Wright, Chris Cillizza, guys, thank you so much for your time this morning. We certainly do appreciate it.